Alrighty, and we're live again. Welcome back to the show. Nice to have you back on.
Nice to be here.
Awesome.
Hello.
So, this is Weeb Reviews episode, what the hell is it? 6.
Six?
Episode
I
6.
think you're up to 6 now.
Yes.
So.
It says 6 on my little recorder here, so
We'll
this is
go with
episode 6. So, for anybody who doesn't know, who's just jumping in, this is an anime review podcast. We get together, so far it's been about every week, and we discuss and review different anime series, movies, things like that. Last week we did A Silent Voice on Netflix, which was a movie. That was our first movie. This week we're doing our second movie and our first Ghibli film. Actually, my very first Ghibli film that I've ever seen. So, hopefully,
Not anymore.
yeah, hopefully people will stop telling me I don't know shit about anime because I haven't seen Ghibli.
So I've seen Miyazaki. I know.
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. I mean,
That's all it
they
takes.
probably won't because I still haven't seen like Full Metal Alchemist and and
It's
Akira and
No, you know what? You still
Neon
got that
Genesis, but you know.
You got that to look forward to. So,
Very
yes.
true. So, this week, first Ghibli film. What did we watch?
We watched Kiki's Delivery Service.
Kiki's Delivery Service.
A good Studio Ghibli 101 kind of entry.
Yeah, it
I
was. It was good. I enjoyed it. Leslie watched it as well. She opted out of this review, but it was her first Ghibli film as well. So I know she enjoyed it, but she didn't have a whole lot to say about it. So,
Yeah.
hence why you're here, because I feel like you'll.
Well, I've always liked Miyazaki's stuff. I've only seen 3 or 4 of his films, but I've just really taken to his stuff. Just the artistry to it, the craftsmanship, the writing.
Yeah.
It's like, when you watch those movies, you're not watching, stereotypical anime with all of the look, the frenzy. You're watching, an animated film from Japan. It's, it's its own thing.
Yeah,
And each one of them is its own thing. So.
It reminds me almost of like the Japanese equivalent of like Disney.
Yeah, kind of like that.
It's just kind of like, it's like very storybook. It's very like fairy tale almost in the way it is, but like fairy tale in a uniquely Japanese and like a uniquely sort of anime-esque way.
It has a unique. I don't know if it's unique, but just for what I've seen, compared to like a lot of other more popular anime series, things like that, you can tell you're looking at a Miyazaki film, a Studio Ghibli film,
Yeah.
just by the way they draw it.
Yeah.
There's a clean, crisp look to it that, it's stylish, but it's not cluttered. It's not hyper realistic. It's in each one you can tell it's the same style behind it, the same design, but each one has its own look.
Yeah.
You know? And they're each one of their movies. They're just, you're watching a movie. It just happens to be animated, just happens to be from Japan.
Yeah.
So.
And I thought it was excellent.
Yeah.
So let's before we jump in any details here, again, spoiler alert. You can't spoil. It's a fairy tale. You can't really spoil this.
There's no plot twist.
Yeah,
in it.
it's just a watch experience.
It's a good, solid family story. It's like a coming of age kind of story.
Yeah. So. But there's your spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Well, you're gonna find out what happens.
You're gonna find out what happens in it, but it's not gonna ruin it.
It's not gonna ruin it. It's a good story to watch. I've seen it twice, so it's...
Yeah. So so let's just start by. Normally we would kind of just introduce the characters, but in this film, it's kind of like half the characters you meet don't even really have names. So it's not really
townspeople.
They're just kind of townspeople.
There's the watchtower guy. There's the
art girl.
Yeah.
There's the bakery woman Osono. Like, so there, it might be more relevant to just give a kind of a brief summary of the plot, and just explain the characters that she meets as she meets them. I will just explain Kiki a little bit, just so that we have an idea of what her story is. Kiki is she comes from a family of witches and she's 13, and when witches turn 13, as tradition dictates, they kind of strike out on their own as sort of like an apprenticeship kind of thing, and
field study, if you will.
Yeah.
Learning to become a grown-up witch.
And they go off and they find a town and they set up kind of a life there and like a business of some kind, and start to sort of find their own way from there. So it's like basically like any other kid striking out on their own, but just done like years earlier,
a lot younger,
and with magic.
Yeah.
So,
but it's not like magic isn't really a main component of this.
Yeah,
it's nobody makes a big deal out of it. It isn't some striking thing. Doesn't make her a superhero.
No.
It just it makes her sort of like, like her mother, for instance, in the town that she grew up in. Her mother's the town witch, but her big thing is making all of these different like
medicines,
special medicines and things like that for people's ailments or whatever, or other just potions and things.
Yeah, she seems to be like more of like an alchemist almost.
Almost like that. And Kiki's big thing is she
rides a broom.
She rides a broom, and that's honestly it's the only magic you kind of see from her. So
yeah, now that I think about it, that's the only magic she does in the whole film.
Yeah, so it's basically they're not magical beings; they're just people that have the ability to practice, non-evil witchcraft.
It's even compared to, by one character, it's even compared to like artistry.
A bit.
It's like there's a character she meets that's kind of like when she winds up having sort of a crisis. She meets this character who's kind of like, oh, like, don't worry about it. Like, sometimes I get art block. It sounds like you're having a similar situation. Just take some time, relax, get back to your roots, and try it again. But take some time to relax. Don't stress yourself out about it. The more stressed you are, the harder it's going to be to get back into it.
And that's kind of the theme of the whole thing. Is that it's basically a coming of age story for this 13-year-old girl who leaves home to strike out on her own, all excited and full of all kinds of,
whimsy,
all kinds of eagerness and just ready to take on the world, until she gets to the world and she gets very intimidated by it, and then slowly learns to kind of find her way, into her own skin, as it were. Witchcraft in this world it's not a Western style, magical thing. Yeah. It's almost like just sort of having like a special talent, like if you're good at math or an artist or a good musician or something. It's just kind of on that level. Nobody makes a big deal out of it, and it's actually a little sweet.
Yeah, it is.
This is a good family movie, actually.
100%, it is. I mean, so yeah, let's just run through kind of the brief of it. So, I mean, we pick up with her
on her 13th birthday.
On her 13th birthday, talking to her mother,
getting ready to leave,
and basically saying, "I'm leaving tonight." And her mom's like, "All right, okay."
Yeah, it's expected, it's ready, and they're actually, it's almost like it's like a Japanese witchcraft version of a bat mitzvah. She's 13 and time to go off on your own. You're a grown up now, and it's without quite as big of a party, really.
Yeah, it was just a few of her friends and her family,
and then she goes,
a couple of people from the town she lived in.
And she's still very much 13. She takes off on her broom to go hit the big city.
Hits a couple trees on the way.
Yeah, hasn't really figured out how to fly the thing yet. And there's a lot of cuteness in that. Her pet. I don't even know if I could call it a pet.
Yeah,
it's really it's a black cat because witches. He talks. He's a bit of a smart ass. He's sort of like her, kind
of like a voice of reason.
He's basically her conscience, to a degree. But she kind of stumbles her way through to kind of find her own way in all these cute little adventures. It's funny, but it's smart. It's witty.
Yeah, it's a. I don't know. I already mentioned this, but like it's a whimsical child's kind of almost fairy tale. Like I could see this being like a fairy tale that was just adapted into an animated film.
It had that feel of one.
Yeah.
Like not like a Grimm Brothers fairy tale where
they're
basically they're taking all of the serial killer stuff and just putting in cuteness. No, it's like a, I don't know. It's almost like it's like a cross between Harry Potter and Judy Blume almost. And you just, there's a variety of characters that kind of meet along the way in her adventures.
Yeah, but as we said, like half of them don't have names, so it's hard for, it's like it's hard to go down like a list of characters when you don't know most of the characters.
Well, I mean, you start off with mom and dad. You meet Gigi. She meets, she gets into town. She bums around town trying to find her own way.
Yeah, she bumps into the clock tower guy, the police officer, Tombo, briefly.
This boy that just loves so thrilled by the fact that she's a witch and just
can fly,
and he's
obsessed with flying. That's like his whole personality trait is like
right, and that's what does it.
I love flying. Okay, what else about you? Flying. Well, okay.
It isn't Lost. You don't need to we don't need everybody's backstory. We just need, the character. It's Kiki's story. We just need to know how these characters play into Kiki's story, and it's very well blended. It's like you don't have any, like you get with some anime series where everything stops and so introduces themselves and things like that, and there's this big intro. These people just sort of flow into her life, in and out of her life as she goes.
Yeah, and
it's very smoothly done.
Yeah, so she gets into town with Gigi, and she bumps around for a little bit, and then she winds up. How she actually gets the idea to kind of start her delivery services, she's standing on like a
bridge,
like overlooking
like an overpass. Well,
kind of. It's so describe the town.
The town is basically it's postcard Europe.
Yeah,
I
said it was Europe TM.
Yeah, it's basically what it is like it's a fantasy world, but it's not Lord of the Rings fantasy. It's still this world, but it's just you've got generic European town. It has touches of France in it, has touches of Germany. On the waterfront you think you're in the south of France. In town you feel like you're in Austria. There's French names to things, there's German names to things.
A little bit of Italy.
A little bit of everything. The cars look like they're from the 1920s and 30s, but everybody has TV sets and television and telephones.
Yeah.
It's all sort of mashed together. There's planes, there's Zeppelins. So it has this sort of like, it's basically, if you took the mid-20th century of Western Europe and you mashed it all into one time and place, you'd have this town.
Yeah.
And it's this very, not quaint, because it's in this world, this is a big city, but it's still a smallish town, a lot of people, but it's clean, it's friendly, it's a bit of a seaside town.
Yeah. Because that was her whole thing. She's like, I want to find a town on the beach.
It's a friendly, comfortable, accessible world that people are just, you're comfortable watching. That's the thing about this movie is like it's a comforting film.
Yeah, that's true. So she's standing on this. It's not a bridge. It's
like an overpass
in front of a railing, sort of. And
that's when she meets.
That's when she meets Osono, who is carrying a pacifier and shouting to a woman off in the distance, be like, "Oh man," who's pushing a stroller, and she's like, "Ma'am, you forgot your child's pacifier," and she's like, "Oh, I gotta go. I gotta close the shop,"
and all 9 months pregnant of her has to go running down this cobblestone road to catch her.
So Kiki goes, "Oh, I could just bring that to her," and she's like, "Oh, would you? That's so sweet." So she
hops on her broom
and,
goes
and
right over
jumps
the
off the railing, and Osono's like, "Wah!"
and off she flies.
And she flies off and delivers it, and then she heads back to Osono to bring a thank you note from the woman. And right as she goes to leave, Osono's like, "Hey, like, why don't you stay and have something to eat? Why don't you, let's talk a little bit?" And she finds out Kiki doesn't really have a place to stay yet, and says, "Well, we've got a vacant room. Would you want to stay here?" So, she's very grateful. She stays there, and then it only takes, I was surprised. It takes her like a day, 2 days to be like, I figured out what my business is going to be. I'm going to start a delivery service.
Just
it's
touched by inspiration.
Yeah, and it was funny because I was kind of like, the pacing again. It's like a fairy tale. It's like, did they necessarily write the most realistic possible characters and world? And no, but they like.
That's not the point of it.
That's not the point. The point is, the characters all represent something. It's not that the characters are the most human characters they could possibly write, but they all represent a certain thing. And, so she gets this idea she's going to start this delivery service, and she's also going to help around the bakery in order to find customers for who need things delivered.
Earn her keep.
Yeah,
as well.
and in order to help kind of like pay for the room that she's staying in. So she starts helping out around, and then she gets her first delivery she has to make, and shenanigans ensue where it was like a stuffed cat in a cage, and then she goes to deliver it, and she gets caught in a storm and loses the cat, so that she has Gigi,
who just so happens to look just like the
just so happens
cat.
to look identical to the stuffed cat. Gigi
Gets press ganged into posing as a toy cat.
Yeah. So does a damn good job too.
Yeah, well,
able to maintain perfect statue-like stillness when tossed around the room.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this movie, is that it's even adversity for her is done in a very, it's a mild, somewhat funny, still relatively safe. All the breaks kind of go Kiki's way, kind of thing.
There's very little conflict in this film. There's a conflict within herself,
and that's about it. And that's kind of the point.
There's not a lot of interpersonal conflict.
But that's kind of the point, though.
Yeah.
It's really about her going from, a 13-year-old kid to kind of just growing up into I don't want to say like a young woman, but because she's still only like 13, 14, but really just more like growing into her own confidence, her own understanding of who she is and what.
Growing into who she's growing into her own personality, sort of.
And that's really the central theme of this.
Yeah.
Which
carving out her identity.
Carving out her identity.
Yeah. So, so she has the cat, Gigi fill in, and then goes back to find it, and in the process she meets Art Girl, who, as far as I can recall, doesn't have a name.
No.
That we find out at least. So she found the cat out in the woods, and she kind of lives out in the woods in a cabin where she does all her painting and her sketching and things like that. Makes a deal with her in order to, she'll clean her cabin in exchange for Art Girl to fix the rip that was in the little cat toy.
Because it did actually drop out of the sky.
Yeah.
So
then she that all goes according to plan, and Art Girl's like, oh, you should come back, at some point, come visit. And she goes, and fortunately the very, very large dog that was looking after Gigi was actually just looking after Gigi, because I guess Gigi can talk to all other animals.
Yeah, well,
because fantasy.
Just because people can't talk to them doesn't mean animals can't talk to each other.
Yeah. So Gigi communicates to the dog to bring him outside and swap out with the stuffed cat, and everything goes according to plan. Gigi makes one weird comment on the way back to the house. It's like the only weird comment I was like, what, in this movie? She's like, oh, I met an artist out in the woods. She wants to draw me or use me as a inspiration for a drawing or whatever. And Gigi's just like, nude? And it's like, what?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. Well, it's, I said it's family. I didn't say it's strictly for kids. But there's sly humor like that throughout it. Just little things that are just, that there's still a mature sensibility to it. But it's very PG. And, the interesting thing about Art Girl, there's two, it's almost like Kiki finds two role models in her life. She finds this Art Girl who's this very, kind of out on her own, independent, free spirit, hippie-ish kind of person who's very much comfortable in her own skin, is just, hey man, whatever kind of thing. Complemented with Asuna, who is this motherly, friendly, nurturing family, owns her own business with her husband, has, is expecting a baby, and is very much of a home life kind of thing. So you've got these
and it has her own business in the city, and
right? And you've got these two different characters, I guess, but they're really sort of the same person, and she's these two positive influences that actually you can see how they kind of inform who she's going to become.
Yeah. They kind of like, they both represent a different. They each represent
one's responsibility,
the
the
two
other's
halves
creativity.
of like Kiki's kind of personality, because
Yeah.
she is very responsible, but she's also very impulsive, and she's also very, she's still a child at heart,
Yeah.
and but she's also responsible, and she's she knows how to clean, and how to cook, and how to do things like that, and so she has, Osono, who is the responsible sort of, like I said, mother figure kind of character, and then you have Art Girl, who's kind of representative more of the childlike wonder, and like the more funny enough, more of the witch side of her. And is Art Girl is the character who ends up, I guess, I don't know, not inspiring, but
I'd say, well, there's a she finds inspiration in both.
Yeah.
I think, she's a 13-year-old girl who's, she comes in, she's all full of piss and vinegar and ready to roll and take on the world and do all these things. Hey, I've got this inspiration. I'm going to run my delivery service. And in doing so, she handles it like a 13-year-old would, which she doesn't plan ahead. She doesn't react to things. She doesn't listen very well. She gets in all these problems that she then has to kind of improvise her way out of. And it makes for a funny, entertaining story. But in the meantime, though, with Asuna, she's learning, she's learning responsibility, real responsibility, commitment, stability.
Yeah.
How to basically be a grown-up, and yet through Art Girl, she's learning to kind of find her own inner voice, her own creativity. And and there's a nice piece there where when she's kind of falls out of that balance and she starts to kind of lose sight of who she is.
Yeah.
And her skills sort of kind of go with that. It isn't until she gets that balance back by talking to Art Girl where she really kind of she really gets herself back, and she really gets kind of like, at a time when she most desperately needs it, she kind of finds herself.
Yeah.
In a good old, movie storytelling fashion.
Yeah. So she gets back after the delivery, and Osono's husband made a bread sign or logo for the front of the bakery, made essentially like a little sort of logo for Kiki's delivery service out of bread, and hung it in the front window, which was cute. And then she winds up going and trying to do these other deliveries, and meanwhile Tombo shows up again. He kind of, when she first got into town, he sort of helped her get out of a little bit of a bind with a police officer, and he's been sort of pining after her since. So he's like, hey, I got this party, why don't you come? And she's sort of like, I want to go, but I don't know if I want to go type.
It's a very cute, it's somewhat formula kind of boy meets girl, girl meets boy story.
Yeah.
He's a local kid. He's a little, you get the sense he's a little bit street smart, but you're not really gonna, that's not really what it's about.
No.
But she's definitely the new girl. He comes in, he's all fascinated by her, kind of to the point where he's a little off-putting, and she's a little embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
And so she kind of gives him, points her nose up to him, doesn't want anything to do with it, and he's all just like a puppy dog, just can't get enough of her. And finally gets her to go to a party.
Or, well, invites her to the party.
And to a party.
She doesn't give him an answer, but he says, I'll be back at 6. I'll be back at 6 o'clock. So, have an answer by then. And she runs out to do the deliveries she needs to make for the day. And she winds up getting behind schedule, helping this old woman with
all kinds of things.
With all kinds of stuff. Initially, she was supposed to deliver a pie for the woman, but the oven was broken.
So she fixes the oven.
She helps use it. She helps with cooking the pie, and then while the pie's cooking, she's replacing light bulbs around the house and just helping with stuff.
She's a very considerate. She's a good kid.
Yeah.
But she loses track of time.
So she loses track of time in part because the clock in the house is
It's just off.
It's
like 10 minutes.
It's
10 minutes slow.
So she's like, oh geez. So she rushes out, and it's now thunder and lightning out.
She has to fly all the way across town.
All the way across town to deliver this pie.
City, really, yeah.
Yeah, to deliver this pie to this ungrateful granddaughter.
Just a spoiled brat kid.
Yeah.
Let's just put it right out there. She's just a spoiled little rich kid.
So,
but I to be honest with you, I'm not sure how into a herring and pumpkin pie I'd be either.
Yeah. I mean that's true, but so she delivers the pie and she gets back just as Tombo is leaving, and he doesn't.
And he waited a long.
He waited a long time for her out in the rain, and he didn't see her getting back, but she saw him. And Gigi's like, "Oh, we've still got time," and she's like, "I can't go in these wet clothes." She goes up to her room, and was it the next day that Osono goes up to visit her? The next morning.
Yeah, she gets home. And this is kind of an important, kind of a key element here is that one of the problems with Kiki is that she's this very spunky little girl from a small town. And in a small town, she's just like everybody else, and she's great. She has a cute little black dress and a cute little red bow on her hair, but that's pretty much all she has for clothes.
Yeah.
So
she
gets to
very
town, and it's a
about
big
that.
city. Well, it's a big city, metropolitan city. She sees all these shops, all these clothes. One of the first things she sees is this group of girls walking by with all of this fashion on and everything, and they walk right past her without even noticing that she's there. You could tell she's immediately intimidated by it, and the biggest problem she has with it when getting invited to this is like, I don't have anything to wear. This is the only dress I have. I'm so plain, and she really just loses whatever confidence she had. She kind of loses.
She also comments on that when her mother's helping fit her with the dress.
Right.
At the beginning.
Yeah. But then she really feels it when she gets to the city. And then when and when she meets this boy, she likes him, but she doesn't admit it. And she tries very hard to get back in time for the party, but it's driving through basically a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
So she's completely drenched. She's really embarrassed. She can't even face the kid. She can't even face Asuna at that point.
Yeah, she basically just says
nothing.
I'm going up to my room.
I'm going to bed. And she just basically sulks her way upstairs, climbs into bed, catches the really bad cold. She gets sick. She's laid up for a couple of days, and just bottoms out.
Yeah.
For this kind of a story counts as bottoming out.
Yeah. Well, this isn't the rock bottom that she reaches. She reaches a worse point later on.
Well, this is where she reaches the worst point, because once she starts feeling better, all of a sudden she can't fly her broom anymore, and she can't understand what Gigi's saying to her anymore. All of a sudden it's back, instead of being, sure we should pick another town, I don't think we should fly, this kind of rainy, all of a sudden now it's just meow.
Well, it was actually because you still have a little bit of while she's recovering from the fever, after she recovers, she can still understand Gigi at first.
No, because
because then she goes out to help Tombo with the bike. She goes to make that delivery, and she goes on foot, and then she makes the bike fly briefly when they go off the edge of the bridge, and then it's not until she goes to leave.
No, that was before she got sick.
No. This is after, because she goes to leave. Because they're like, oh, let's go in the Zeppelin, and she's like, no, because she sees the fancy dressed city folks. Then that's when she goes to leave. She gets insecure, and she sees the girl.
Because that girl is one of Tomba's friends.
Yes.
That's what it is.
And then that's when she goes to leave, and she gets on her broom, and she can't fly.
No.
And then she can't understand Gigi anymore, all of a sudden. And... yeah, so
she feels just like any other friendly but somewhat introverted 13-year-old girl would feel in the presence of all of these outgoing, rambunctious, rich kids that are part of a clique that she's not one of. She starts to feel very inadequate.
Yeah.
And being a witch, that's going to manifest itself in some ways, which is the loss of her powers.
Yeah. And now I initially had written down, I said, Kiki's losing her powers. Is it because she can't keep smiling like her mother told her to? That was the one kind of last piece of advice. It was like the one big piece of advice her mother had given her before she left. She's like, always remember to keep smiling.
Well, you know what? I took that as two ways. At the beginning of the movie, when her mother told her that, I equated that with the same thing as Dory basically just saying, just keep swimming.
Yeah.
But later on in the movie, towards the end of it, I thought about it, and I was like, I think that had more to do with just, within yourself.
Yeah.
Just don't lose, just it was a very mom way of saying to just kind of, to make sure you don't ever like feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, and don't lose sight of yourself, and don't let things get you down. And she essentially, she does, she lets things kind of get to her, and she loses her powers. So
there's that's, and the nice thing about this and the fact that it's a good story for, frankly, it's a great story for other 13-year-old girls, but it's a good story for anybody, really. It's like, because it touches on some negative things, but it doesn't dwell on them. It's just, it really keeps its eye on the ball narratively, because just at the right time,
it's a feel-good film.
Art girl shows up in town to do restock on her supplies and do some shopping. So they basically
and sasses her a little bit. It's like, you never came to visit, so I came to visit you.
So she hikes her way out to the woods.
Yeah, she invites her to come out and stay with her for a couple of days.
And it's an educational experience. She sees like this painting that this girl's been working on, and she explains to her like all the ups and downs she goes through.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, and she gets this sense of like, oh, this isn't just me. This is, she's gone through the same set of feelings, and she came out the other side of it, and she starts to inform her.
And look at what she can create now.
Look at what she can do now, and she makes this gorgeous painting. It's just
and not only that, but this actually informs two parts of her. This informs also her insecurity about her appearance and stuff. And Art Girl's like, oh, I tried to use you as the model based on what I remembered, and she's like, that's me? Like, that girl's too pretty. I'm not pretty.
And she
just laughs at her. She's like, yes, you are. Shut up, you idiot.
Like, what, are you kidding me? Yeah.
And there's also the couple of comments she makes when they're hitchhiking out to the woods, and the one dude drives by. I'm just like, guy must have been blind not to see these two beautiful ladies on the side of the road.
Oh, the truck driver.
And then the truck driver stops for them, and then it's like, what do you mean you thought I was a man? And he's like, well, look at the way you're dressed.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you kind of get this, like, she's very much like,
it's like a big sister kind of thing.
Yeah,
that she doesn't have but really needs. Like, Asuna is like a very much of like a surrogate mother to her, but Art Girl is like very much the big sister that she needs to kind of like, I could be just like her, kind of thing.
Yeah,
just a role model, really.
And Art Girl is sort of like what's the expression? It's like water off a duck's back.
Yeah,
something like that.
She's learned to not let anything bother her.
Yeah, and she's learned to just kind of like do exactly what Kiki's mother told her to do. It's like, just keep smiling. It's like she doesn't let anything bother her. She just kind of like goes with the flow and rolls with the punches. It's like, yeah, it's just, it is what it is. Life is the way it is. And, I just laugh at it. It's like crazy stuff happens and I can just laugh at it.
Yeah.
And she embodies this philosophy that Kiki kind of desperately needed to know about. So,
Ursula, by the way.
Ursula is the name of Art Girl?
Art Girl's name is Ursula.
Well, I insist they did not give her a name in the film.
Well, I looked it up.
Maybe it was in the credits.
Might have been in the credits. She might have said it once.
Maybe.
At some point, but I don't recall hearing it.
Yeah.
It's a very natural flow to this too, because you don't have anything where people stop and say, I am Ursula, blah blah blah.
Ursula, my arch nemesis.
Whatever. It's just she comes in and just basically like, hi, I'm, if they even gets to that. It's it's a very naturally flowing. It's well written in terms of just how the plot flows, because everything just sort of moves into itself.
Yeah.
You don't have these episodic moments where there's, you could like a cut to commercial kind of moment in it. It's just the whole story really flows as one. It's actually really well written.
So she stays with our girl for a bit, and
Ursula. I believe it's Ursula.
God. So. Stays with her for a bit, and then goes back to the city, back to her room, and stops on the way to visit the older woman with the pie.
Well, she was summoned there.
She was, yeah, because Osono calls and says, "Hey, you got
a delivery
on the way. Stop by there." And it turns out the woman had made a cake for Kiki as a thank you, and kind of was like, "Oh, make sure you deliver this to that girl Kiki if you see her." And she kind of chuckles and goes, "All right, I will," And while there, the woman's roommate, I guess.
Well, they're watching it on TV. There's this massive Zeppelin that they've been refurbing or building or whatever, and at the edge of town, that's this big
It's the
town
one that
project
Tombo's been obsessed with.
that he's been obsessed with. That's getting ready to go on it. That went on a test flight. Now it's getting ready to take its maiden voyage. And this is where I kind of say it's like it's really like a mashup of like time and space, because earlier on I think you see a plane flying by.
But
now all of a sudden there's something like
because
that.
Tombo was trying to make his flying machine.
Yeah.
And it was a plane, sort of.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to think that because all the phones were rotary phones, they were old tube TVs.
It's definitely mid 20th century. But this Zeppelin, which those things that existed since the 1890s or whatever, all of a sudden is like treated like this experimental technology. Well, they're watching it on TV, and it's almost like a space shuttle launch. Everybody's watching it, and it goes poorly, to say the least.
Yeah, because there's a big
and you have your big
there's
moment
a big wind.
Yeah, it's a seaside town.
Yeah,
but you have your moment of crisis now.
Yeah.
So Kiki has to and naturally,
Tombo's there,
right in the middle of it.
He winds up getting lifted off the ground
by this runaway Zeppelin.
By the runaway Zeppelin, because he's hanging onto the rope with this big crowd of people.
And he's the only one not smart enough to let go.
Yeah.
So basically.
Which, knowing him, I can't say I'm surprised.
She likes him, but she's definitely going to be the thinking member of that.
Yeah. So she sees him getting on the news, getting taken away kind of by the Zeppelin. That's out of control. And she runs out into the street and sees the Zeppelin off in the distance, and she sees this shop owner who's standing on the side of the road with a broom, just a standard
actual janitor's broom, not like a witch's broom, like the flat broom with the bristles, like the ones you actually sweep the floor with. She grabs that thing.
So she grabs it. She's like, "Can I borrow this?" And he's like, "Sure." No. So she grabs it, and then she starts sort of flying again. It's very reminiscent of when she was first flying on the broom. She starts kind of like bumping into some of the buildings and stuff.
Well, it's more than that though, because when she first leaves home, she knows how to fly. She gets on the thing, she kicks it off, up it goes, and she just has trouble steering it because it's a bigger broom than she's used to. But this one is like up to this point her powers haven't come back, and she really needs them right now.
Yeah.
And she just hops on this janitor's broom and just finds it within herself to just finally make it work.
Yeah.
And it isn't now, because now it's not something where she was just born with and kind of went with. Now it's something that she herself.
She needs to find it within herself.
She herself is making this happen.
Yeah.
It's not, I grew up with it and it's always just been there. It's like now it's her internally doing the work here.
Yeah.
And sure enough, she gets flying with it.
There's a couple of little issues,
but she gets there. She saves the day.
I wrote down a quote that made me chuckle. Was she was having trouble with the broom getting it to steer right, because it's, I assume, probably partially because it's not the right kind of broom. And she goes, "Fly right or I'll burn you."
Yeah. Straighten up, fly straight or I'm gonna burn you.
Yeah. So the blimp. The Zeppelin crashes into the clock tower.
After basically crashing into everything. Fortunately, and they make a point of mentioning this, Zeppelin's full of helium, not hydrogen.
Yeah.
So you don't have a Hindenburg kind of thing.
I literally wrote Hindenburg Part 2.
Yeah. So you don't have the typical anime plot twist where the thing explodes into flame and burns everybody in town to death or anything like that. It stays within its own theme. Full of helium, no problem. It's crashing into stuff. It's out of control, but
so Tombo's stuck hanging from it. It's caught between these two buildings. And so all the people inside are okay. They're hanging there, but he's stuck on the end of this rope
that he's barely
able to hang on to at this point.
Now, never mind the fact that with all of the swinging and crashing and stuff it's done at this point, he has to have a grip like the Incredible Hulk just to have hung on at this point, but I guess he can't last forever.
Yeah.
So still a cartoon.
Yeah. So now she's floating within like inches of him, trying to reach out to his hand, and the broom's still having trouble. And it's this like last moment kind of like I got you, no I don't. Like,
it's not. You're still dealing with a somewhat of a formula story here. So it is like it's much harder to catch him than it really ought to be because he's on a broom.
I just wrote down no pressure.
But it's just a very...
Don't worry, you've only got the entire town watching you on live television.
Right. So she
save this kid's life.
So naturally, she catches him at the very last second.
Right as he lets go.
No,
he falls. He
falls and she races him down.
And catches him.
So and when you're watching this, if you've ever seen like literally any other television show or movie ever anywhere, you know exactly how it's going to play out. But you know what? You don't care.
Yeah, that's not what it's about.
Because once we get off the plot and the characters, we start talking about the style and the aesthetics of it. We can get into it that way. But it's, even though this is not an innovative story, it's told very straightforward.
Yeah.
Its structure and its pacing and just, but just the themes they talk about, the way it's written, the dialogue, the way it's presented, it's very smooth and it's straightforward. And you don't mind that there's a few cliches in there. You don't really mind.
Yeah. So she catches him and saves the day, and then kind of during the credits it sort of gives a little montage of where are our heroes now, and it kind of shows Tombo's helping her set up like a more permanent sign for her delivery service outside the shop, and the two of them are flying out making deliveries and spending time together, and she never gave the dude's broom back.
One of the things I really liked about the end of this movie was the way they ended it. They had this, sort of just, life goes on kind of thing, like showed around the town, back to some of the locations that you spot, and there with just people going about their business, shot of the waterfront. But yeah, you did. You had, Asuna and her husband, who literally never says a word beyond making two grunts in the entire movie, sitting there with their new baby. Tom is flying his plane that he managed to finally build. She's got her delivery service.
Yeah.
But it's, you get this sense
and you see
of like
the little girl dressed like Kiki, and she sees her on the street and kind of.
Yeah. So you get the payoff for the theme. Is like this girl, she's got her own style kind of thing. Gets intimidated by the fact she doesn't quite fit in. She learns to be more of herself. Has a moment to prove herself, and she gets the payoff that she starts seeing people.
She inspires a little girl to wind up
and other people, and
I'm
things
sure
like that. And
it was representative of a
but it's it makes her, she becomes part of the community rather than just the visitor to it.
Yeah,
and it's just so it's just and it's just this nice kind of like let her home to mom and dad. It's sweet.
Yeah,
So,
even she finally writes home. So.
Gigi meets this, hot little white cat, takes off, makes a family of his own.
Some kittens, and he looks just so haggard at the end there when he's standing next to all the kittens.
Yeah. Well, the
two kittens that look exactly like
2 daughters, 1 son.
Two kittens that look exactly like the little stuffy kind of white cat just sitting there, looking stuffy, and then one little black cat that looks exactly like him. Yeah. That's just like freaking out, and you see his whiskers are all bent and haggard, and he's just like he's got this like 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah. But in the meantime though, he's you get a little bit of it. You just get this little background stuff of it isn't just people. They don't have anything going on unless they interact with Kiki. You get a glimpse of the fact that these people have, even the cat, have their own lives, got their own things going on, and it's presented visually. It's not, you don't have
an hour-long narration at the end. That's
one of the things, and as much as I love anime, it's like one of the things that always bothers me about more traditional like television anime, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, the shonen stuff. Things like you get a lot of exposition.
Yeah.
You get a lot of speech making, a lot of declarations about what's going on, and they don't show you; they just tell you. Movies like this story, you learn it by watching it. The story is told visually. You could shut the sound off on this, turn off the subtitles, watch this movie, and you would still get a gist of what it's about, what happened, and how it went as you watch the story. Because you can, Miyazaki, like any great filmmaker, can tell you what's going on just by showing you the pictures.
Yeah.
And that's the baseline for this thing. And anything with the studio, anything he touches really, I think, is that he is a good filmmaker. His medium is animation, but if even was live action, I think he'd still be a really good writer and a really good director.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So that's the summary. I mean, the plot was really straightforward, as you said. It's, I had said it really comes across as more metaphorical.
Yeah.
The film, it's more, as I said, it's very fairy tale. The characters aren't necessarily written to be three-dimensional, well fleshed out, realistic people. They all represent something. They represent an idea.
They represent something in her life.
And and I even said, it's kind of contrived, but like not in a bad way. It's a kid's film. It's contrived in the sense that
it's a film about a kid.
Right.
But it's really good for. I mean, it's a good.
It's a family.
You could watch it with your kids, but I'm at my age. I could sit down and watch it, and I still think it's charming as hell. I think it's great, but it's just the look of it too, because they don't drown it in details. It looks more like a moving illustration of a children's book.
Yeah.
And it's just, but it's shot cinematically. There's some you take some still frames from that, and there's some great looking cinematic shots in this movie of some of the way that they present things and some of the motion, the way it works. The fact that this was made in what, 19?
Oh God, I don't remember.
I want to say it was like 1989. I'd have to even look it up to tell you the truth. Basically pre CGI. So it's as far as I know, the entire thing is hand drawn.
Yeah.
And the way the motion works in this, and the detail, the crispness of the animation, you have to go back to like, Disney in their heyday for a feature-length movie that's this well animated. Maybe at that point you had some of the Don Bluth stuff in the 80s, like An American Tail, Land Before Time and stuff.
Wasn't Lilo and Stitch
was
the last hand animated?
Yeah, but even that had a lot of computer stuff in it, I think. Because that was 2002. 2002. It was because I was down at Disney World in 2001.
Yeah.
And I toured the animation studio when they were working on it.
Yeah.
So it had to 2002ish. But this was, as far as I can remember, this was made in like the late 80s, early 90s. So it's if not entirely hand drawn, mostly hand drawn. And what I really like is the craftsmanship that's into it. It moves as well and looks as good as anything they make today with the assistance of computers. And I think that's the real. It's the artistry of it that I think is one of the things that are really drawn to Studio Ghibli, anyways.
Yeah. I was gonna look something up, but I don't care enough. So, very much a lighthearted family film. All the characters serve to impart some kind of a lesson or represent some larger idea for the most part. They're not, it's not. Last week, Leslie and I discussed A Silent Voice, and the characters in that were written to be people, real, organic, fleshed out people. That was excellent. This was equally excellent, but it was the opposite. It was like they were representative of an idea. They weren't realistic, but they were as realistic as they needed to be in order to convey the message they were trying to convey. Kiki Kiki was the most kind of human, most realistic character because she was
The main
the
character.
protagonist.
Yeah.
But, you know, even she wasn't like a one-to-one analog of like a real person.
Yeah, you
You
start
know.
off with the fact that she's a 13-year-old witch. You can
Yeah.
kind of throw realism out the
A
window at that
13-year-old
point.
witch who goes and starts her own business and is actually very successful. It's
Yeah.
like, but it's not a bad thing. You can have that. You can have characters that aren't the most realistically written
It's a target audience
characters
thing
ever and still have it be a damn good film.
Yeah, it's a target audience thing. Like Silent Voice, you know, the story is the characters
Yes.
and how they interact with others and what happens to them.
Yeah.
This is very much this is the character of Kiki is
It's going
you
on
know
a
is
journey.
your vessel through which you see this, you know, coming of age story. And it is.
Yeah.
It's a formulaic early, you know, preteen coming of age, you know, early teenager coming of age story. This is how you know, learn to be more yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and it's told extremely well. It's not over the top. It doesn't hit you over the head with anything. It's a subtle story, but it's a clean, crisp, entertaining, a little bit funny, a little bit sad, but nothing, you know, nothing major on either end. It's
Yeah.
it's good, clean fun.
Yeah.
It's which, you know, and these days for anime is kind of rare. And
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and, you know, considering we
You
had to go
get-
back 30 years to find this one.
Yeah,
You
you
know?
know, and it's like you can still find, you know, cutesy fun, but it's interesting that it's not like with the rise of like the kind of the moe trend in anime, in some ways you kind of get away from the style that Kiki was animated in. You know, you get a lot more if you want still like a cutesy show. Now it's going to be a lot more kind of moe cartoonish with like really really big eyes and really they've mastered like how to craft the mathematically cutest thing now, and now that's just every character is just copy and pasted the same face.
Well, that's
And this was before that, but she's still cute as hell. She's an adorable character.
Well,
And, you know, they did a really great job with that.
Well, I think the thing with that is the fact that you're dealing with, and he's not the only one that's like this, but he's the most famous one that I can think of the Japanese animators that Miyazaki does is like, you know, he's never, I mean, he only retired. I mean, The Wind Rises came out, what, a couple of years ago?
I think 2017 was the most recent Ghibli film that I've seen.
It's his last. I believe he retired after The Wind Rises came out, which I can't wait to see. But he's never, one thing, I mean, I don't know Studio Ghibli in general, but I know, I'm pretty sure that he has never, you know, he's always stayed true to his own style. Much like
Yeah.
Kiki, he's stayed true to his own style.
Yeah.
He does not involve, you don't get any shonen stuff. You don't get any of that moe stuff. You don't get anything that looks like, you know, you can, you know, look at it and say, oh, that's textbook this style.
Yeah.
You look at one of his films and you see his style.
Yeah, it
So
is interesting.
So
It's-
you're not watching, you know, his intention is not to, here's my contribution to anime. His thing is, you know, I'm making a movie. It's animated. I'm from Japan. That's about as close to as cliche anime as you're going to get with him.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, you know, he very much carved out his own style. You know, he carved out his own, you know, like there are films that are animated similarly that kind of replicate the style, and like they're a Ghibli style. They're not. It's not like it's like, oh, Ghibli is just, you know, this stuff. No, it's like he's stuck so true to his own aesthetic that he wanted. You know, much like you know, like for American filmmakers like Guillermo del Toro, you know, or like even like
I was Tarantino or something
yeah,
like that.
I was gonna
whoever.
say Quentin Tarantino. Like,
But-
they have a style all their own, and Ghibli's the same way. Now, granted, there's nothing. That's the only thing that Quentin Tarantino and
Actually, if you Kill Bill Volume 1, there's anime in it.
is there.
There is.
Interesting.
Have you ever seen Kill Bill?
I've seen it in pieces, but I haven't seen it.
Oh, you watch Kill Bill Volume 1. It's all a tribute to like Bruce Lee, Hong Kong, Kung Fu, like Hong Kong gangster movies, samurai films. There's anime in it.
Interesting.
And it's actually pretty good. Yeah, the whole thing about Kill Bill.
Maybe I can review it on here.
Well, you could.
Review 1 2-minute scene from
Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2. First half is all Japanese, second half is all spaghetti western. It's phenomenal. But you know the thing I think about this is like I compare it to this. When I was a kid, I was a comic book junkie.
Yeah.
To the point where I was very much in like I could look at the art without seeing the credits on it.
Yeah.
And I could tell John Byrne drew that, John Romita drew that, Frank Miller drew that, Klaus Janson inked that, because you could tell just by looking at it that each artist has his own style.
Yeah.
I can,
they have their own visual signature.
They have their and just the way they draw it is the way that it's drawn through their sensibility. So they make it look like any real artist.
Yep.
You can tell by just the pen work, the penmanship. You can tell by the paint strokes, the brush strokes, anything like that. And it's their look. Miyazaki has his look.
Yeah.
And you can tell it just by seeing it. And he's always kept that. And that's, it's rare these days.
Yes, indeed. Sound-wise, it was very cutesy. It was very classic, just
It wasn't overwhelming. It was just everything sounded like it was supposed to sound. It didn't sound, there wasn't anything bizarre in it. It's just, it's like any movie like this. The sound is just there to complement the action. Yeah,
nothing jumped out as especially good or especially bad. It was it just did its job and it stayed in the background and to the point where I didn't really have anything to say about it. So it's just like it clearly just did its job.
Well, honestly, the best sound is stuff you shouldn't notice. Yeah, you should just feel it. And but they made smart choices with it. Yeah, there's no rocket noises or whoosh sounds or anything with the broom. It just goes. And the nice thing about it is like you can tell. When she hits a tree, you can hear the tree. Yeah. The leaves in the tree and the branches in the tree and stuff, and then she keeps going. So you get a sense that she's flying, but you don't actually have to listen. They don't have to actually come up with a sound for the broom. No, so it's nice. It's smartly done.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to kind of discuss about the film as a whole in general?
I think there's not enough stories like this made these days, to be honest with you.
That's
I think
probably true.
I'm sure they're out there. I haven't watched one of his films in a long time, and it's kind of like reinvigorated me to kind of want to go watch Spirited Away again. I want to watch The Wind Rises, Howl's Moving. Just go back and like rewatch all this stuff. Honestly,
now it's all on.
It's all on HBO Max if anybody has
it.
Not to plug it, but that's just where we found it.
I want to just say something about that shit for a second here, okay? It took us like 15 fucking minutes to figure out how to get it to play in Japanese. Because here's the thing. So we were watching it. We were casting it through the Chromecast on a phone, right? So we're on the phone. We're looking at the screen with the movie, and it says
the language setting on it.
There's two language settings. It says English and Japanese.
Yeah.
You click it once, it says English. You need to set it to tell you what it's not.
Yeah, you need to set it to tell you what it's not going to be coming through.
So we kept clicking it to where it said it had the little triangle and it said Japanese, and we're like, all right, and we click it, it started playing in English. So finally I got it. I'm like, what happens if I click it so it says English? So I clicked it, it said English. I hit play, it plays in Japanese. What the fuck?
You know what?
I'm so upset.
Okay, HBO Max is a brand new thing. My personal review of it could be a whole separate podcast. Okay, content-wise, it's awesome, but it's like, it's like an MS-DOS kind of quality navigation site. Okay.
Yeah, I had to say that because we thought we were gonna have to watch it in English, at which point we weren't gonna watch it.
I never thought I would need a pencil eraser for a website, but I do for this one. So.
And also we watched like 15 seconds of it in English.
Don't get the dubbed version. Just don't.
The cat voiced. Gigi's voiced by like.
It's never a good idea. I'm a purist about it. It's never a good idea to listen to an English dubbed version of it. Some versions out there are better than others depending on what you're watching. But watch it in Japanese. You listen to the voice, the person who does the voice for Gigi, even when he can talk, and it sounds exactly like a black cat that could talk would sound. I don't know who he was, but whoever the guy is that they had for the English dub version, you could tell was like whatever the moderately famous stand-up comedian or television sitcom comedy relief guy was. They hired to do the voice for this. Totally
so
off.
wrong.
So wrong. You could tell, oh, that's so and so. It's like, I don't even know. It's like first thing out of my voice is like, this guy sounds like Bill Burr. And
Yeah,
like,
it was
just doesn't.
I don't know, Kiki.
I don't know. No, but he's like, I talk like this. It's
I was
like
expecting a laugh track to come on.
right, exactly. It was awful. Don't. It does. English language dubbing of Japanese anything is a touchy go at best.
Yeah.
I don't know who did it, but they didn't. Just in the small sampling I have, they didn't do a good job.
It's the same thing. I'm gonna have a whole rant when we finally review Fate Zero. I'm gonna have a whole ass rant about the voice. The guy who does Kirutsugu's voice in the English dub. He's an excellent voice actor. He does a lot of awesome stuff. He did I don't know if it was the way he was directed. That's a whole rant. I will save that for when we review Zero.
There'll be a separate extra special episode on the
just me ranting
the pitfalls of English dubbed anime.
Oh god, you know what? I kind of want to do a Weeb hour now where we just watch a few shows, or a few episodes of a few shows that we're familiar with, watch them in the English dub, and just laugh at them.
It's
and
like
then
a
just
Mystery Science Theater 3000 for dubbed anime. That's gonna be awesome.
That would be great. I want to do that now, but I have to write that down.
If anybody wants to listen to that, clear about 5 hours of your schedule because it's gonna take a while.
So, oh my god. So, well, I guess as some final impressions, I mean, it's just a really good overall family film.
Yeah.
It's, one of the best examples of classic anime that really anyone can enjoy. And I think anyone could enjoy this. Anybody.
You guys, you'd never seen a Studio Ghibli film before. I'd seen like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
And you asked, like, which is the good one to start with? And I said, if you're an anime person, but your anime experience is, the really, like, dark science fiction-y horror fantasy kind of like edgy stuff like that, you're going on a completely different frequency with the Studio Ghibli stuff.
Yeah.
You want a good primer for that, a good intro to Studio Ghibli. I think Kiki's Delivery Service is a good start. It's not something you'd watch where you could say, wow, that's like so different, or it's really intense. It's like if you want to appreciate the artistry behind it, you see that, and then you watch the later films, and you can kind of see how he evolves till he gets to his masterpiece, which is Spirited Away, which is probably maybe one of the best animated films I've ever seen. Yeah. So it's just, it's a masterwork.
I have a friend who's seen a ton of Ghibli films, almost all of them.
Yeah.
And she basically said her favorite still is Howl's Moving Castle.
Which is very, very good. It's close to it, but there's a magic with Spirited Away that he hit on. Just the precision of the animation, the quality of the character design,
and you
the
talked
flow
about it
of the story, everything. It's a home run. I mean, it's a grand slam. It's just
you talked about it in your in the interview I did with you. That was the Desert Island Ghibli film. If you had
it is
one Ghibli film for Desert Island, that was the one you said.
There were things in there, and granted, it's in an age where there's probably some computer in it. There's some computer assistance to it, but there were a lot of scenes in there where I'm watching this and I'm like, how the fuck could you find the time to draw all that?
Yeah,
it was
and
just,
I'm sorry, like,
and it wasn't overbearing. It was like just there's so much for the eye to take in that isn't work to do it. It's a masterpiece, I think.
Yeah, and really, a little bit of computer assistance doesn't take anything away from me unless it's poorly executed, like what we talked about in Demon Slayer. Right. Where there was a couple scenes where it was like, whoa.
Oh, I've seen worse than that, though.
I know. There's a lot worse than that. I've seen clips of worse than that. Yeah. Fortunately, I've managed to somehow avoid... Actually...
That goes back to my Tango and Cash rule.
Yeah, there are some scenes in Season 3 of Attack on Titan that are like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like with the Colossal. But whatever, we'll talk about that when we do Attack on Titan.
We'll get to that.
Oh
That's,
my God.
Attack on Titan's going to be its own.
I just need to did you see the trailer dropped for the final season?
I did not see it.
Well, I'll have to show you when we're done. It looks...
Okay.
I'll have to show you when we're done.
Right.
It's just...
I'm all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't know. I'm in kind of a good mood. I don't really have it ruined by anything with Attack on Titan. You know? It's like, can we wait till it's like dark, rainy, and like, you know, I'm between paychecks or something? So.
But yeah, so the trailer dropped for that. So if anybody wants a timeline, you know, for watching these in the future or listening to these in the future, if you want a timeline as to when we're recording these, we had the final season just got its trailer dropped. So we'll see. I think I'm gonna wait to review it until the final season's out, and we can just review the whole thing.
Yeah, that'll be a part 1, part 2, part 3.
Yeah, it'll be a 4-part because I'm gonna do each season individually. So that's. I don't really have anything else to say about that. So just a little housekeeping. This will, for the time being, we've been getting kind of overwhelmed with, you know, last couple weeks we've done movies just because we can bang those out in one sitting. Going forward, this is going to be the last review for a little while that's going to be weekly. We're going to jump to bi-weekly for a little bit between us sort of running out of, you know, 13-episode shows that are just a single, you know, sit down in 2 sittings and bang the thing out. We're kind of running out of shows that we can do that with. Everything now is starting to get to multi-season or, you know, 26 episodes a season. You know, it's 10.5-hour experience. That's a lot to bang out in a single week, on top of editing, on top of my job, on top of...
Well, yeah, I mean, quarantine's coming on, and we got to get back outside and start earning again.
Yeah, so everything's...
have to resume our lives.
Everything's getting a little bit busy, and unfortunately, you know, until I am able to start actually bringing in some sort of income from something like this, you know, it's just too much work to be doing for free when I could be using that time to work and get paid. And, you know, on top of that, it's cutting into my ability to watch some of the stuff I want to watch on my own, you know, and not necessarily, because there's a lot of shows that it's like, damn, I really want to sit down and watch this, but I don't have anybody who's willing to review it with me right this second. So I don't have the time to sit and watch it on my own because I'm got to do these reviews, but also I want to watch it, but also I don't know who to review it with. So it's just been kind of cutting into my own enjoyment of the medium right now, just because I'm so busy. So this is going to be the last weekly review for a little while. For the time being, taking a little break from that. We're doing bi-weekly. So the next episode will not be coming out until 2 weeks from today. So, or 2 weeks from the time this is released. So we'll...
You got some time to catch up.
Yeah, you got some time to catch up. I know we've been doing a lot of long episodes. You know, I feel like I give a lot of content. You know, usually given like 3-hour-long reviews. Fortunately, the movie ones have been a lot shorter, closer to like hour and a half. So, you know, we'll be doing that. And next episode, so 2 weeks from now, Leslie and myself will be reviewing the series Beastars. We're gonna take a break from doing all these movie reviews and get back into series again, just because I kind of want to break from movies for a little bit. So gonna do that. I believe it's a Netflix original, so you probably won't be able to find it anywhere other than Netflix. But you know, Netflix is pretty widely accessible at this point. So that's what we'll be doing on the next episode. Again, that will be 2 weeks from now. That won't be next week. So bear that in mind in case you come back here next Monday looking for an episode and you don't find one. So until then, I appreciate you coming back on again.
My pleasure.
It's
Happy to be here.
Always nice to have you on. And
this is the most talking I ever get to do, actually.
Yeah, aside from you and I, when you and I are sitting and talking about the stuff.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody wants to listen to that for 6 hours.
No.
So.
These are the short versions of these conversations. Yeah. You guys are getting the short version. So yeah, until next time, you know, we'll definitely. I really want to get our hands on Ghost in the Shell and Akira to do those soon. Trying to find a way to do that. So until next time, we'll you know, we'll talk to you later, and you know, keep watching that Weeb shit, guys.
See you later.